Well, Dean, thank you for hosting me again this morning. And yes, before we get started, there is one important piece of news that I do need to relate. And I recognise that this may upset the political apple cart, may be seemingly controversial at this time, and perhaps may be going against the flow amongst the political turbulence that we're seeing at the moment. But I can confirm here and now this morning that I'm not running for the leadership of the Conservative Party. So rather than spending time cleaning my ovens this morning, instead, I thought that I might share some thoughts on the urgent need for a renewed sense of political vision in our politics, the current leadership contest, and some personal ideas on housing policy in particular. Dean, it scarcely seems possible that it's 12 months ago now that I spoke here at Policy Exchange, setting out some of my initial thoughts on housing. And yes, it's fair to say that quite a lot has happened in that time. Sadly, what hasn't changed is the deadlock over Brexit. And if anything, the country is now even more divided than it was a year ago. And that hasn't been for want of huge efforts to find a common way forward to deliver Brexit. No one could have tried harder. No one could have put their heart and soul into finding a way through the storms that have battered our politics more than Theresa May. Indeed, there is no one more committed to our country, public service, or our precious union. It has been a huge privilege to work alongside Theresa for some 9 years, both when she was Home Secretary and during her time as Prime Minister. To see that utter determination and steely resolve to get the job done, whatever the personal price to her might be. To know that passion for social justice and opportunity society and driving change on mental health, domestic violence, modern slavery, racial disparity. Equally, to experience her kindness and support, especially when I had to take a step back from Cabinet for cancer surgery last year. And I think it's right that as she stands down as our Prime Minister, we recognise that and we do thank her for her service to our country. But we must now choose who should succeed her. There are already 13 people who've said that they intend to stand as the next leader of the Conservative Party. In anyone's terms, that's rather a lot. And who knows, someone else may have declared their hand even whilst I've been on my feet this morning. But there is a serious point this scramble for the leadership has exposed. There is so much talent in the leadership candidate stories. There is a wealth of experience, ideas, and vision to choose from. But we simply don't have the time to waste. We simply don't have the luxury of weeks of navel-gazing or days and days of whittling candidates down to the final two, and equally the risk that we're just talking to ourselves. At a time when this country is looking to us for leadership, I think we need to show that as a party. So I gently say to some of my colleagues who put themselves forward for what has been described as the grand national of political contests, please think carefully. If you already know it's going to be a bit of a struggle to get over the first fence, let alone Beecher's Brook ahead, then maybe you should pull up. There is no embarrassment in that. It doesn't reflect on talent or ability to influence the direction of our party now and in the future. It's just the overriding need to get our new leader in place as quickly as possible, and to get on with the absolutely critical job of charting the right course for our country. Because the challenge, the huge challenge for the next leader is enormous, but also urgent. This is a dangerous moment, not just for the Conservative Party, but for our democracy, our politics, and the country as a whole. We need to deliver Brexit, full stop. No equivocation, no ifs, no buts. But we also need to set out a compelling, positive, optimistic vision for our country, outward-looking and grounded in social mobility and an opportunity agenda, where people from whatever background can fulfill their hopes, their ambitions, and their potential, and where the state is on their side, not on their back. And we must, absolutely must, address the need for reconciliation and unity in a divided nation. Underlining that despite everything, there is still so much that we have in common, so much more than unites us than divides, and which celebrates the rich diversity that represents the country we are. In short, we need to set out a new contract for a modern Britain, a new deal with the British people. One that goes beyond the tactical manoeuvring of individual policy announcements intended to create a narrative, but rather paints a confident modern future for our country in broad, bold strokes. That creates a positive vision for our country, that paints a confident conservative vision for the future, of hope, of optimism, and belief in what the future of our country will hold, that underlines that our best days lie ahead of us, not behind us. It is against these criteria that I will be assessing my own choice for the leader of the Conservative Party, and what I believe the next leader needs to do in order to remake the arguments for conservatism. Now, one of conservatism's great strengths is its wariness of dogma. As conservatives, we're uncomfortable with its constraints, its blindness, and its totalitarianism. Instead, we're comfortable with history and its nuance, the lessons it teaches us about ourselves and society, and where we come from, the choices that have brought us to where we are, and what this tells us about the present and what the future may hold. Indeed, at our core is a profound sense of pragmatism, allowing us to recast our political message to reflect the needs of the world we see around us. And in this context, the political landscape has changed immeasurably. Noble ideals are just not enough to win hearts and minds. As conservatives, we need to rediscover our idealism and be confident in it. Now, this is as true on the issue of homes and home ownership as any other. Housing is a key political battleground, of course, and a policy area that I've got to know very well. This government has done more than any other in living memory to address the challenges in the housing market. Building on the reforms of my predecessor, we've made significant strides forward with more new dwellings delivered last year than in any year but one of the last 31 years. In the 13 months since I've been Housing Secretary, we've opened a new source of supply in councils by lifting completely the housing revenue account cap. We're pioneering long-term deals with housing associations to shift the whole balance of investment into social housing, making that long-term future commitment so that housing associations can be more strategic. We'll shortly be setting out our next steps on social housing through our response to the Social Housing Green Paper, confronting unacceptable stigma, securing higher standards and putting in place more effective regulation to ensure the voice of tenants is heard and acted upon. We've announced our intention to abolish unfair no-fault evictions, so-called Section 21, and the Tenant Fees Act has just come into effect just a short few days ago, all giving confidence to the 4.5 million households privately renting in this country that the government is on their side and that we want to see a private rental market which protects tenants and rewards good landlords. We've confronted unfairness in the leasehold market with steps to stop abuses of leasehold houses and the inappropriate use of ground rents. I've challenged the development industry to raise the bar on the standard and quality of the new homes we build, with a new homes ombudsman to follow. We've established a wide-ranging programme to confront homelessness and rough sleeping, seeing the first fall in the annual rough sleeping count since 2010. We've banned combustible cladding in external walls of high-rise residential buildings, and most recently agreed to fully fund the remediation of ACM cladding on privately owned buildings, still without commitments from freeholders or developers. And we're improving building safety, making the private rental market the fairest it has ever been, and ushering in a new generation of social homes. And yet, the challenge of turning generation rent into the next generation of homeowners remains. Help to Buy, for all its critics, has helped more than 210,000 families into their own homes. This is something that we can be proud of. And it was right that last year we extended the scheme until 2023, providing certainty to the market and extending the opportunity it provides to even more people. But there is, of course, a limit to schemes such as Help to Buy. We need to be laying now the ground for what comes next. Because home ownership is still what the vast majority of people in this country aspire to. It's why, rightly, my colleagues running for the leadership are looking to rejuvenate the dream of home ownership for a new generation. So I'm going to offer a few personal ideas any leadership contender should consider seriously to help empower consumers in the housing market. The first is how we address the issue of deposits for buying your first home. As has been made clear by many others before me, it's hard to believe in capitalism if you don't have any capital. Auto-enrolment of pensions began in 2012. Record numbers of people are putting into their pensions. We should be looking at allowing an individual to use part of their pension pot as a deposit on a first-time home purchase. We should be changing the necessary regulations to allow this to happen, protecting the integrity of pension investments, but allowing lenders to innovate and design new products to bring this opportunity to consumers. It sort of seems rather obtuse that we should deny people the opportunity to do this, given that we know those who own their own home by retirement are on average A, wealthier, and B, do not have the burden of the largest expense in retirement, accommodation. And it is, after all, their money. Not the funds, not the state's, it's yours. And the next Conservative government should free that capital up and trust the individual to make the choice for themselves. The average 35 to 44-year-old has a pension wealth of approximately £35,000. If a couple could combine their pension wealth, both potentially using a proportion to support a deposit, this would make a huge difference to millions of lives. It would give people real choice real opportunity. We could say to millions of people in this country, you do have capital, it's yours, you do have choices, you do have freedom. To those who are in their 20s and finding it difficult to save, I think this idea offers a genuine route to a deposit. We can say to that generation that there is a way. They do have a choice. They too will have that freedom. Similar schemes already exist in comparable countries. In New Zealand, the Kiwi Saver schemes helped over 30,000 people onto the housing ladder last year. In Canada, the rather prosaically titled Group Registered Retirement Savings Plan was this year updated to allow people to use up to 35,000 Canadian dollars of their pension savings to purchase a home. Millions of Canadians have benefited from the scheme. And this new type of regulatory approach to the mortgage market, I think, should also be mirrored by a change in lenders' approach to risk. It's a common refrain, but it's true. For many people, there would be no cost difference between paying a mortgage as opposed to paying rent. For many, a mortgage would be cheaper. We've more data now than we've ever done to assess someone's capacity to access debt. So how can we use it more effectively? A track record of consistent rental, credit card, council tax and phone bill payments should carry far greater weighting than they currently do. We need to be making the regulatory environment easier for lenders to assess someone's real creditworthiness. Now, these are major reforms, arguably on the scale of right to buy, and they are also profoundly conservative, trusting people with their own money and empowering the consumer with greater choice. Now, it would be entirely wrong for me to be here at Policy Exchange and not to mention the other B word, of which Policy Exchange assuredly has become the spiritual home. No, not Brexit, but beauty, and the conversation which has now got underway on promoting beauty in the built environment. Politics should be about tapping into these universal ideas, because they're the ones with the greatest potential to inspire and ultimately bind us together. Now, in provoking this debate, I don't want to tell people what to build, contrary to what people may think. I just want those who are responsible for building to understand that popular consent matters. Of the 222,000 net additions to the housing stock last year, 195,000 were new build homes. And as output increases towards 300,000 new homes a year by the mid-2020s, questions of quality and design will only become more important, not less. We have to be challenging now to ensure that the next 1 million homes we build are to a standard of which we can be proud. Housing cannot just be a simple numbers game. We're in the business of building communities, not units. We want to build homes, not houses or flats, growing a sense of place, not undermining it, and recognizing the sense of identity which comes from this. The strength of feeling, the importance we attach to our roots, the identity and pride drawing from saying, I'm from here and this is my home. That isn't parochial or small, but utterly essential to understanding how the model world is making a sense of place more important, not less. Place, like beauty, is a universal idea. It's a special connection and sense of belonging that never leaves us. That's why I've made the case that we need a new unionism, and I'm more convinced of that now than ever. There is something special and unique about our country, and by extension, this sense of citizenship, I think, will become an even more important part of our national story as we leave the European Union. The rights we have, the values we share, the benefits we enjoy and the duties we owe. These should be things that not only our own people cherish, but that people from around the world aspire to have too. This new unionism goes beyond the relationship of the four nations of our United Kingdom, but about the relationships between the towns, cities and regions within and between them too. Our units of solidarity are multiple, from the family to the street, through to the city and beyond. I am both Essex boy and Londoner, English and British. We all feel that sense of belonging in different ways and on many different levels. It also underlines to me the need to ensure that no places feel left out or left behind. It's why our city deals, the Northern Powerhouse and Midlands Engine, matter so much. The essential need to harness the strengths of all parts of our United Kingdom in driving our future prosperity, and that is felt across the country. Providing a sense of opportunity, of driving ambition and potential in towns and areas that haven't felt the proceeds of growth. That's what lies at the heart of our £1.6 billion Stronger Towns Fund, and what needs to inform the next steps on our UK Shared Prosperity Fund in raising productivity, jobs, skills, and prosperity across the country. Why we should create town deals which pull investment streams together and set out our commitment to those places as government to be a positive catalyst for change and getting out of the way to allow local innovation to flourish. But as government, we also need to get smarter and better on how we make our big infrastructure investments too. We need to join up Whitehall better and strengthen our capabilities so that the decisions we take aren't in silos, but they do achieve multiple goals on housing, on connectivity, on economic growth and productivity. And yeah, we need to make this real to the public too. As Margaret Thatcher once observed, you and I come by road or rail, but economists, they travel on infrastructure. We need to communicate our policies and vision into the practical reality that people feel and experience in the places that they live and in their everyday lives. And this includes joining up social policy too, starting with stronger families. One of the biggest mountains that families face is the feeling that they're battling multiple problems on multiple fronts on their own, dealing with multiple agencies and multiple people, sharing the same issues and same problems with them over and over and over again. I've seen through the Troubled Families programme how it doesn't have to be this way. Around 400,000 families have now been helped by the programme's whole family approach, with its emphasis on early intervention and its track record in tackling complex challenges. It's shown how this is making an important difference and proven its ability to give people hope and a brighter future. But it's also broken down silos, with a sense of solidarity among services working with these families, who are among the hardest to help for years, but who now grasp just how much more can be achieved for them when those people, when those organisations come together. How the outcomes for families are better when people work together. That's why I'm such a passionate advocate for the programme. I want to see it go from strength to strength, because the implications for wider public service delivery, I think, are profound. We had the new public management model under Margaret Thatcher in the 80s, then the choice agenda, followed by the open public services agenda from 2010. Well, I think the Troubled Families programme, with its model of services joining up around a whole family, I think that could suggest the next wave. So that when we say that we want opportunity for all with no one left behind, we mean it. Now, it is on this scale of ambition that the next Conservative Party leader needs to work at. Because we still have political battles yet to come against Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party, and it is one we must win. And this is the challenge confronting Conservative politics. Can we hold the disparate strands of policy and ambition and fashion them into something which binds us together? There is a logic which says the two conservative traditions of economic freedom and a sense of belonging work against one another, that they must lead us in different directions. Well, I say we can and we must harness both. This is our coalition. This is the Conservative family. And the job of the new Prime Minister, supported by their cabinet, ministers and colleagues on the backbenches, is, yes, to bring that family together. To make your economic freedom enhance your sense of belonging, and for that sense of belonging to shape the economic choices your freedom affords. To set out that renewed contract with the British people and harness our great country's potential as we look to a positive future beyond Brexit. We are now at the start of a debate about the very future of the Conservative Party and the future of our country. If it begins and ends with the question, who should be the next leader, then we've already lost. We are a party of ideas, or we are nothing. And the time for that vision, those ideas, is now. So that we write the next chapter of our country's proud history and be confident and optimistic about the path that lies ahead. Thank you very much.
Questions? Lady there in the middle. Name and organisation, please.
Victoria Houston from the IEA. I'm slightly concerned that the proposals on housing that you've put forward this morning are really focused on demand-side stimulus and some regulatory tinkering. Do you regret sidelining the one interesting supply-side project initiative, which was the Building Beautiful Commission, when you sacked Sir Roger Scruton based on some social media storm? Oh, and have you apologised to Sir Roger?
Okay. Well, I certainly have not in any way backed away from the whole issue of building better, building beautiful. As I've reflected in my speech, this is a concept, an idea that I think is something that does go beyond so many different elements. And it's something which we now have, obviously, Nicholas Boyd-Smith as our interim chair who has taken over from Sir Roger, and I pay tribute to the work that Sir Roger did in that role. It was really important, and I'm deeply saddened as to the turn of events and how things have worked out here. But that in no way underlines or in any way reduces the commitment that I have to this agenda. It really matters. We need to harness the work that has taken place thus far around all of this. Because ultimately, you're right, it does come down to those issues of the supply side, how we make out that greater level of consent for being able to build. What I describe as bridging the head and heart gap, where people may know and recognise that we need more housing, but we don't necessarily want it where we live around here. And yes, that is about places. Why when I took on this role, I very firmly wanted to style myself as the community secretary, because we should be about building communities, about that sense of place and identity, some of the things that I've reflected on in my speech this morning, but how the sense of beauty in the built environment is a profound and significant part of that. So I recognise and pay tribute to the work that Sir Roger started and how it is and remains essential that we follow through on that. And certainly that is my continued commitment. It's something I believe in so passionately about. I want to ensure that our Commission comes forward with ideas that are able to take that on to the next level, that are able to see that level of implementation, and that we are creating those places and spaces that are well designed, that have that sense of relationship between the built environment and the natural environment, that actually we're looking at the long term here, and why, as I said earlier on, this isn't a simple numbers game. We need to think about those issues of community and very, very firmly those issues of beauty.
Gentleman in the middle there, in the middle aisle. Yeah. Name and organisation, please.
Tim Rawlins from NCC Group, the cybersecurity company. You talked about infrastructure, connectivity and skills as being core elements of future development. Could you explain what you're doing to try and break down those silos that are existing within the civil service? At the moment, there's a great disconnect between departments and organisations responsible for most of those elements, and trying to draw those things together is a real challenge at the moment. Thank you.
Well, thank you for flagging it in that way, and it does actually go to one of the things that I highlighted on, frankly, what I think is a better need to join up Whitehall on some of the strategic level investments that we're taking, whether that be on digital infrastructure and cyber, or indeed our road or rail networks. How the decisions that we take can be better joined up to be able to harness, yes, economic prosperity, yes, connectivity, but also some of these issues of housing and place as well, where the positioning of a road or rail network, or indeed the rollout of infrastructure, can actively achieve a number of different goals, a number of different objectives. And how I think that there is a need for stronger capability within central government to be able to draw the different departments that are engaged around this work together, so that it is, you actually can get and make the rollout, the delivery of this more effective, but also how you're looking at this in a way that is able to achieve a number of different objectives too of wider social policy. Now, the National Infrastructure Commission clearly has an essential role to play, but I think there is still a missing gap here, that we can do more at the heart of government that is very much with the question and the thought that you had in mind. And that's just not about capacity, that is about some capabilities, having that core unit that is able to better align and draw things together. And yes, speed up and make this happen in terms of housing, but also so many other issues too.
Quite a few other hands raised. In the middle there. Yeah. Name and organisation, please.
David Walsh from the Campaign to Protect Rural England. You've spoken about identity, popular consent, and people feeling like the state's on their side. And too often people feel development's something that's done to them, and that the homes that are built make profits for developers, meet market demand, rather than the genuine need for affordable and social homes. So what do you, and those social homes provide a stable base from which people can build. So what do you see as the role for social housing in the future?
Thank you. I see a really critical and pivotal role for social housing as we move forward and as we look towards the delivery of the 300,000 new homes a year. But the affordable and social sector is a core component of this. That's why we did make the announcement last October to lift the borrowing restrictions on local councils to be able to get on and build a new generation of council homes. But I know that there is, I think, more that we need to do to see that those freedoms are unlocked, and indeed that we ensure that there is effectively innovation and work with, whether that be housing associations, indeed the private sector as well, so that you're really unlocking the full potential around where those new freedoms sit and lie. We have our £9 billion affordable homes programme, and £2 billion that's already been committed beyond that through to 2028. Guarantee facilities that are in place as well to help support housing associations with that build too. So, I entirely recognise the need for us to be building across the sector, with social and affordable homes being a core component of that. And so we'll be setting out some more thoughts on perhaps a new contract with social housing tenants through the Social Housing Green Paper response. But no, that delivery, the need to build more, is a core component, and how some of the longer term deals that we're putting in place are absolutely about responding to and addressing that, because it is the across the board approach that we profoundly need if we are to meet the challenges that are there in terms of a housing market that needs fixing.
At the back. Name and organisation, please.
Thank you. It's Jessica Smith from Rockwool UK. We make insulation. I just wondered, you spoke a lot about across Whitehall working and on big strategic decisions, and I wonder if you could talk a bit about your vision for how housing fits into some of the discussions about climate change and clean growth, and how your department can play a really good role in making sure houses are built for the future and sustainable.
Thank you, and I'm really glad you made that point, because I think as we look at the way in which we are building, we do need to have that sense of sustainability, that sense of how we can encourage and promote a cleaner and greener environment, with a generation coming forward that these issues matter more to than probably any generation that has preceded them. And therefore I think there are opportunities that we can respond to and address in terms of the way in which we look at construction, the way in which our new homes can be more energy efficient, the way in which we can bring the sort of green energy within that too. And indeed how we look at our spatial planning. That relationship between, as I've said, the built environment and the natural environment does go to that sense of place of well-being, and how we can unlock more green spaces and their accessibility to them, I think, through smart development too. So I think there is a really significant, a really important role that we do have to play in terms of meeting our goals, our ambitions, our intent, in terms of sustainable development, and also in terms of just that natural approach to the environment around us. And yes, this is something that we're working on with with DEFRA and other departments too, as to how to take this agenda forward that, yes, allows us to build the homes that our country needs, but in a way that is sustainable, in a way that does recognise these really important environmental issues. And that's a live conversation, but one that absolutely is taking place.
Any other questions? Anyone? Name and organisation, please.
Hi, it's Jenny McKinnon from PA. I just wondered, in terms of the leadership race, how many candidates do you want to see in that leadership race at this stage, and who should be dropping out?
Well, thank you. I've obviously set out the challenge in terms of the Grand National Contest that I've highlighted. Look, individuals will know their levels of support, and therefore the point that I'm making is that we just need to get to a process, a place quickly, where we are down to a small handful of candidates, so that we're really getting on and speeding up the process. I think that's sort of the point that I'm trying to make this morning. I'm not saying to anyone in particular, you should or shouldn't be there. That's not for me. We've got the contest that we have at the moment, and I think it's good that we have so many talented people who are putting themselves forward. But we just don't have the luxury of time. There is an urgency behind this. There is a need for us to get on with this contest. And so I hope that people will carefully reflect as we look towards the formal part of this contest, that there is, as I've said, no embarrassment in recognising that perhaps the right thing to do is to say, do you know what, I'm not going to proceed further in this contest, to have provoked some ideas, some thoughts. But there is a real sense of urgency when we look at the time period that we have on the current extension over the Article 50 process. We need to find a way to get on with this, to get a new leader in place quickly, yes, to ensure that we take that contest out to the membership, but looking at ways in which we're able to speed up that process. And I think that period of reflection, I hope, is what some colleagues will do, looking at their levels of support and just thinking, well, is this the right thing to do at this time? Can we move forward more quickly? And I think that's just gently the challenge that I'm just asking this morning.
Gentleman there at the front. Front of name and organisation.
Jack Airy, I'm Head of Housing here at Policy Exchange. The Mayor of London says we need 66,000 new homes a year in London. Your department has said it's actually around 100,000 new homes per year. I just wondered where you think those extra 34,000 homes should be built. What sort of sites, what sort of locations? The new build market in central London has dried up completely. The outer London is already quite, it's already built on. That means we need to look at certain planning constraints. Or maybe we should be making London bigger. The boundaries for Greater London were set in 1963. I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Well, I'm certainly not going to open a debate this morning over London boundaries or anything like that. I can see Tim Donovan with his pencil quivering behind you. Now, I think there is a real challenge, a real need that we have in London. And actually how London is not performing where other parts of the country are. And I think there are questions that we've got to ask ourselves, indeed, where the Mayor himself has the lead responsibility. So, I don't think it's right that I should be specifying here or there or wherever. It's actually how we recognise some of the, I think, issues, the challenges that I hear over certainty about the way in which decisions are taken. We obviously are supporting the Mayor through the Affordable Homes programme to get on and deliver on the affordable homes element of this. But actually, you unlock more social housing, you unlock more affordable homes if we get everything building. And that's the point that I make to the Mayor, that we do want to see that greater level of development and that greater level of work, because that's actually how we unlock more social and affordable homes that I know clearly matter to me and matter to him. So it is about that level of certainty. It is about how we give confidence to those who are looking at developing in London. Because my sense is that confidence is not in the right place that it needs to be. And indeed how we look further afield through our growth into the Thames Estuary too. And that's sort of from a housing perspective, not a governmental perspective. It's why I produced the response to the Thames Estuary Commission on the need to look at how we get the economic and housing development out into the Thames Estuary, to have that connectivity, to see the themes that we need to unlock the huge potential of the Thames Estuary area, and why I do want to see a cabinet level champion for that programme in the same way that we have ministerial leads for the Northern Powerhouse and also for the Midlands Engine too. So having a sense of focus and ambition, and equally seeing delivery in our capital city. If we don't get London building, then we won't get up to the delivery that we need in terms of the overall homes that need to be built. There are levers, there are measures that are there, but equally we need to get on with that. And if that means that I've then got to have separate conversations with individual London boroughs, well, that's not the path that I would necessarily choose. But I think it is that challenge that I think I need to give to the Mayor, to work with us, to recognise that sense of ambition and what we need to do for the benefit of Londoners and the benefit of meeting that overall housing need. Oh, hands going up.
Last questions as a clutch, please. I see I've got three last. Gentleman at the back and two in the name and organisation, please.
Good morning, my name's David Blackburn, I'm from Brunswick Group. Your proposals on pensions and indeed wider credit risk are very radical. I was wondering, would you go further and look at default automatically enrolled pensions and allow them to be slightly riskier and to invest in renewable assets and other such assets? Thank you.
Two more questions at the front, and we'll take them as the last.
Hello, Peter Bill from Property Week. Just changing the subject gently to the high streets. There was reports over the weekend about throwing all the used classes up in the air and putting them around. I wonder if you've got any comments on whether that's true or not. Thank you.
Hello, Tim Donovan, BBC. Sadiq Khan has described Donald Trump as a dangerous far-right populist. He's landed at Stansted. The president has described Sadiq Khan as a stone-cold loser. Who's right?
And one more question at the back. I see one other hand patiently waiting.
Thanks, Mary Roberts, JRF. You alluded to sort of people's sense of place and the regional kind of inequality around the country. And I was just wondering, and the role of the Shared Prosperity Fund in sort of starting to address this. And I was just wondering, given the kind of what's happening politically currently, what do you foresee happening with the Shared Prosperity Fund going forward, and particularly around the spending review as well, especially because the consultation has been delayed,
of course,
etc. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Right, let me try and run through each of those in turn. Yes, on this idea that I'm floating this morning and how people are able to use their pension pot. It is new. It's it is radical in that sense, but it is grounded on experience that we have seen in other parts of the world. And as I make the point out, this is something that people, I think, should have that flexibility to be able to use. But at the same time, it's important that we get the balance right in terms of overall security and ensuring that there are the pension support is there ultimately at the end towards the retirement period. So I won't stray more broadly into different asset classes, and I'm going to stick to my housing brief, if I may, this morning, and just underline that I think there is potential here that we do need to pursue, particularly if we're to overcome this barrier of deposits and how to meet them, which I think is a real inhibition at the moment in terms of being able to provide that sense of someone being able to get onto the housing ladder and to have the home of their dreams. Just on the high streets, yes, we've done some things already in relation to permitted development rights and some of those aspects, because I want to see sort of the whole concept of communities within high streets, that sense of vitality, the vibrancy that we know we want to have in our high street locations, how they are the heart of our communities, and how by having more people living and working within them, I think that gives that greater sense of sustainability and that greater sense of vibrancy, particularly at a time where, yes, the internet, social media has fundamentally changed the way that we live our lives, and that I think we do need to think and reflect carefully on what flexibilities may help, what may actually ensure the long term for our high streets, and actually get people coming back into them. How we've seen that by putting different uses, perhaps that may offer a new potential. And so it's something that I'm thinking about carefully as to how we may look at what the next steps around that are, and whether the flexibility is something that may assist, but it's not something that I can confirm this morning. It's rather something that we are reflecting on carefully as to what will and can help our high streets in a changing world and in the changing way in which we are living our lives. Tim, in relation to President Trump, I've been up on my feet to have not seen what comments have been made, but I take you at your word in terms of some of the comments that have been made. Look, there's a serious point here that we have the President of the United States here in our capital city. It's important that we engage seriously and sensibly with one of our closest allies, that relationship that we have with them. Obviously, people will have different views, and indeed, in terms of having that relationship, allows us to have conversations on a range of different issues. I would just say that I think the responsible thing to do is to actually engage with that process, to actually have that conversation, and those that are saying they don't want to see the president, they don't want to meet, I think that's fundamentally mistaken and is not in the best interests of our country, or indeed, here in London, the best interests of our capital city. And just finally, on the sense of place that we touched on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, yes, I think this is really important as we leave the European Union, the structural funds and their replacement, how we have a real opportunity, I think, to reshape and restate the investment to have that greater sense of productivity, of skills, of jobs, of responding to issues of deprivation, and how that will firmly be part of the spending review as we look to the establishment of this new UK Shared Prosperity Fund. Obviously, we have the Stronger Towns Fund that is already now coming into place, and the release of the prospectus to allow bids to come in shortly. But it is that sense of how prosperity should be felt across our country, how the UK Shared Prosperity Fund itself has the opportunity to, I think, add to that, to do that, to make that real, to make that relevant, and for people to actually feel that difference. Because we can talk about these funds, we can talk about all of these big numbers of investment, but it's how you make it real, how you make it something that people feel matters, actually is seeing that change in the job opportunities, the new investment coming into their community. We've got to communicate it in that way. And therefore, how I think there's a real opportunity for us to do so, and the UK Shared Prosperity Fund will help allow us to do it.